At the very beginning of the story, we are introduced to a man named Frank Morris, a criminal known not just for stealing money, but for breaking systems that were never meant to be broken. Frank is arrested after a major bank robbery, and this time, the authorities decide they have had enough. They know that ordinary prisons cannot hold a mind like his, so they make the ultimate decision to send him to the most feared prison ever built, Alcatraz, a place people call the end of the road, a prison built on a lonely rock island surrounded by freezing and violent ocean water. The logic behind Alcatraz is simple. Even if a prisoner escapes his cell and somehow avoids guards' guns and walls, he still cannot outrun the sea. The ocean itself becomes the final executioner. This is why only the most dangerous criminals are sent here. Alcatraz is believed to be escape-proof, a prison from which no one ever returns. As Frank Morris is transported by boat toward the island, even he feels something unusual. The air is heavier, the guards are quieter, rifles are always ready, tall watchtowers stare down at every inch of land. Still, Frank keeps his face calm. Inside his head, he is already memorizing routes, counting guards, and noting blind spots. The moment he steps onto the island, his fate is sealed in the eyes of the law. But Frank does not believe in sealed fates. After a full-body search, he is locked inside a narrow concrete cell. Iron bars, cold walls, and a thin bed become his new world. A guard looks straight at him and says, "Welcome to Alcatraz." And from that moment, the real story begins. A loud bell soon echoes across the prison. Cell doors open automatically. Guards shout commands and prisoners step out in perfect order. Discipline here is ruthless. Every movement, every second is controlled. Prisoners must follow strict schedules and perform cleaning duties without complaint. Everyone wears identical uniforms and lines up for breakfast like machines. Frank studies every face in line. He notices a prisoner named Litmus standing in front of him. Frank quietly complains that he did not receive a fork and wonders how he is supposed to eat noodles. Litmus immediately shuts him down, saying, "This is not your home. Eat what you are given and stay silent." Before Frank can respond, another inmate named Wolf starts provoking him. Wolf is feared throughout the prison, violent, unpredictable, and cruel. Many inmates avoid eye contact with him. Frank chooses not to react yet. During breakfast, Litmus asks Frank for some food. Frank calmly slides his plate forward. While doing so, he notices something strange under the table. Litmus is not eating the food himself. Instead, he is feeding it to a small pet mouse. Frank says nothing but stores this detail in his mind. In a place like Alcatraz, every detail matters. That same night, Frank is escorted to the warden office. The warden speaks calmly but with cold authority. He tells Frank that he knows about his intelligence and past escapes, but Alcatraz is different. Many smart men entered this prison and none ever escaped. The warden explains the rules. Visits are rare, punishments are brutal, mistakes are unforgivable. Then he leans closer and warns Frank never to even think about escaping. Frank smiles respectfully and replies that with the warden watching, no one would dare. But the moment he turns around, Frank secretly steals a small nail clipper from the desk, a tool so small it seems harmless. Back in his cell, Frank hides it inside a Bible. He knows even the smallest object can change destiny. The next day, Wolf attacks Frank in the bathroom. This time, Frank does not hold back. He grabs Wolf and beats him with controlled fury. Guards rush in and separate them. From this moment, Frank's reputation changes. Inmates no longer see him as prey. They see him as danger. Soon Frank is assigned work in the prison library. There he meets an older inmate named English. English has spent decades inside Alcatraz serving a life sentence. He knows the prison better than the guards. He already knows about Frank's fight with Wolf. English gives Frank books to deliver to other cells. Later in the yard, Frank meets a quiet man named Doc. Doc spends his days painting. Painting is the only thing keeping his mind alive. Frank asks why Doc paints flowers that are not on his clothes. Doc replies that happiness exists only in his paintings, not inside him. These words reveal how deeply prison has broken him. Later, Frank approaches English and directly asks about escaping. English laughs sadly and says Alcatraz is not a prison, but a grave. Even if someone beats the walls, guards and guns, the ocean will kill them. English advises Frank to stop dreaming and focus on survival. But Frank is not built to accept cages. That night, an officer informs him that he will be working in carpentry, earning 50 cents an hour. Frank accepts immediately, knowing tools mean opportunity. Later, he casually asks Litmus about escape routes. Litmus jokes that every cell has an air vent leading upward. Frank smiles quietly. A seed has been planted. Soon Wolf attacks again, this time with a knife. Chaos erupts when Wolf even stabs a guard. Watchtower guards open fire. Frank and Wolf are dragged away to D Block, a place of darkness and isolation. Prisoners here are tortured mentally and physically. Wolf threatens Frank, saying he will kill him one day. Frank endures weeks of pain and darkness without breaking. When he is finally returned to his cell, Litmus welcomes him back with a note delivered by his mouse. A new inmate named Charlie is placed in the neighboring cell. Frank befriends him quickly. Charlie is nervous but kind. Frank introduces him to others. Meanwhile, the warden begins surprise inspections. When he enters Doc's cell, he finds many paintings, including one of himself. He smiles strangely. The next day, the warden orders all of Doc's paintings destroyed. This decision shatters Doc completely. Painting was his only reason to live. Frank tries to comfort him, but Doc is lost. During carpentry work, Doc secretly places something into Frank's pocket. Moments later, Doc cuts off his own fingers with an axe, saying he no longer needs them if he cannot paint. Guards drag him away, screaming. Frank realizes Doc placed the flower from his painting into his pocket. A silent message that his happiness was stolen. The next day, Frank notices a cockroach crawling into an air vent. He realizes there must be space beyond the wall. English later explains that Doc mutilated himself because painting permission was revoked. Frank's anger toward the system deepens. During lunch, Frank meets brothers John and Clarence. They recognize each other from another prison. All three share the same sharp mindset. Escape no longer feels like a dream. Visiting day arrives. Charlie learns his mother is dying. English meets his grown daughter and feels crushing regret. That night, Charlie asks Frank to include him in any escape plan. Frank knows the time is coming. That night, Frank gathers Charlie, John, and Clarence and finally speaks openly about escape. He explains that every cell has an air vent leading upward toward the roof. He reveals the small nail clipper hidden inside his Bible and admits he has already begun digging. He explains that the seawater surrounding the island has slowly weakened the concrete walls over the years, making them easier to carve. John listens carefully and confirms that he works in the clothing department where raincoats are stored. Clarence suggests an idea to fool the guards during night checks. He explains that if they can create fake heads and place them on their beds, the guards will believe they are sleeping even when they are gone. The plan begins to take real shape. The only missing piece is crossing the ocean. Frank explains that the raincoats can be stitched together to form a floating raft and life vests. Charlie asks how he can help, and Frank assigns him to stand watch whenever digging happens. If a guard approaches, Charlie will signal immediately. Everyone agrees, and that same night, the work begins. Frank uses the nail clipper to slowly chip away at the vent wall. The work is exhausting and painful. His hands bleed, but he never stops. Every small piece of concrete removed feels like progress toward freedom. Soon Frank realizes the nail clipper alone is not enough. During lunch, he deliberately scrapes his spoon against his shoe and complains to a guard that it is dirty. Other inmates do the same. During the confusion, Frank manages to steal extra spoons. Later, he makes a deal with Litmus Trading Food in exchange for matches. Using heat, Frank melts metal and combines the spoon with the nail clipper handle, creating a sharper digging tool. The tunnel begins to grow faster. Charlie stands watch, but one night his exhaustion catches up to him and he briefly falls asleep. A guard approaches and the smell of burned metal fills the air. At the perfect moment, English steps in and distracts the guard with conversation. Charlie wakes up in panic and drops an object making noise. Frank immediately covers the vent and pretends to sleep. When the guard questions the smell, Frank calmly flatters him and dismisses suspicion. Once the guard leaves, Frank continues digging and soon reaches the vent screws. During carpentry work, Frank secretly steals a sharp piece of metal. One piece he lets the guard confiscate, while another he hides in his shoe. With this metal, he cuts through the vent screws. Now the path is nearly open. Next comes the most delicate part, creating the fake heads. Charlie convinces a guard to give him paint, claiming he wants to make art. John gathers hair from the prison barber. Clarence collects old papers from the library. Frank crushes concrete into powder. Using water paper paint and hair, they carefully shape realistic dummy heads. Each one looks disturbingly real, even in low light. Frank also crafts fake cardboard panels perfectly shaped to hide the tunnel openings. One night, Frank decides to test the escape alone. He places the dummy head on his bed, covering it with a blanket. He slips through the tunnel and climbs the pipes leading upward. Reaching the roof, he discovers a major obstacle. A tall, welded metal grill blocks the final exit. It is too high to reach alone. Below, a guard nearly discovers the fake head, but Frank returns to his bed at the last possible moment. The next day, Frank tells John about the grill. John finishes his own tunnel and agrees to help. Together, they reach the roof at night. John lifts Frank upward, allowing him to grab the grill. Frank realizes it is heavily welded. Cutting it requires a drill. The solution appears unexpectedly during music class when Frank notices a small electric fan. Charlie hides it inside an instrument box and sneaks it out past inspection. Frank works on it for hours, transforming it into a crude but functional drill. That night, Frank and Charlie climb to the roof and begin drilling the grill. The sound echoes loudly through the prison. Guards move toward the noise. Frank manages to cut one bar just in time and stops the drill. The guards dismiss it as machinery noise. The path is finally open. Every part of the plan is now ready. They choose Tuesday night to escape. During movie time, the group confirms everything quietly. Vents, tunnels, dummy heads, raft, and timing are all set. The next morning, Frank places the flower Doc once gave him on the breakfast table. When the warden sees it, he cruelly crushes it under his hand. Litmus explodes in anger and attacks the warden but collapses from a heart attack. This moment becomes the final push. Frank knows tonight must be the night. That evening, English visits Frank with books. Frank asks to shake his hand one last time. English understands immediately. Later, the warden unexpectedly inspects Frank's cell. Guards search everything but find nothing, thanks to the perfect disguises. Still, suspicion grows. The warden orders that Frank and Charlie be separated the next day. Wolf threatens Frank again, but English intervenes, holding Wolf back. English may not believe escape is possible, but he chooses to help anyway. Night falls, the prison quiets. Frank, John, Clarence, and Charlie prepare to leave through their vents. At the last moment, fear overtakes Charlie. Alone in his cell, he panics and decides to stay behind. Frank, John, and Clarence reach the roof and wait. Minutes pass. Charlie never comes. Realizing time is running out, they move forward without him. They crawl across the roof, hiding from searchlights. They descend pipes and reach the outer edge of the prison. Charlie finally gathers courage and climbs to the roof, but it is too late. Alone, he cannot reach the final exit. His chance at freedom fades because of fear. Meanwhile, Frank, John, and Clarence climb the final fence and reach the shore. They inflate the raincoat raft using only their breath. Exhausted, freezing, but determined, they push into the ocean. The dark water swallows them as they vanish into the night. Morning arrives. Guards conduct routine checks. Charlie stands silently in his cell, filled with regret. When a guard checks Frank's cell and pulls the blanket, the dummy head rolls to the floor. Alarms explode across Alcatraz. A full search begins. Guards scan every corner. Boats patrol the ocean. No bodies are found. The warden insists the men drown to protect his reputation. Yet deep down, he knows the truth. Later, investigators question the warden harshly. One detail remains unanswered. A flower matching Doc favorite is found far from the prison, proof that someone survived. Within a year, Alcatraz is shut down forever. The legend of Frank Morris spreads across the world. A man who proved that no prison is perfect and no system is unbreakable, and this true story comes to an end.